So you won't be able to tell right now because I snapped this thing clean and even wiped off the hoses. But what I'm looking to do today while I have this pulled out and I'm showing it off to you guys is because this last piece of push to connect line, it keeps leaking. Like I've recut this end square, I've got different fittings on here, nothing seems to be fixing it. And it just keeps dripping hydraulic fluid on whatever I stack on this rack underneath. So I picked up some parts and we're gonna swap this out and I'll show you how to bleed this. All right, so these are the parts I picked up. We're not gonna need a lot, but it should prevent the leaking from happening again. So what I've got here is a 24-inch stainless steel brake line. This is a -3 end fitting. I've got an 1/8 inch NPT to -3 AN fitting adapter, 2 of those, and then 1 1/8 inch NPT bulkhead fitting. This is what's going to be mounting our gauge. All right, that's good. All right, so the first question is the bulkhead fitting going to fit into the bracket that I made for the last style of bulkhead fitting? Let's find out. It is not. Okay, let me find out what size drill bit this is and we'll drill it out. All right, so this fits in a 5/8 inch hole. I think I have a step bit that size, so let's get it bored out. Not enough ass. Okay. That should do. Perfect. Next. Next, I'm going to mount my gauge back on top. With this being 1/8 inch NPT threads always need some sort of sealant. So there's like a Loctite liquid sealant. Some people use pipe dope. I'm not a plumber, so I don't use pipe dope, but I will use Teflon tape. The physical tape is going to be a little bit more resilient to movement, and seeing as this part literally moves every time you pick the saw up and down, I'll just do a couple wraps of this, and that should seal her up good from any vibrations or flexing on the hoses. All right. The last step is my least favorite part. So I've got the brake line connected to the ram, the cylinder. What we're gonna have to do is fill up a clean jar with some jack fluid or hydraulic fluid or whatever you're filling this with. Disconnect the ram from the body of the saw, submerge this line in the fluid, and then just manually, slowly run the rod all the way in and all the way out until we get the majority of the bubbles out. You'll never get all the bubbles out, and you don't want to get all the bubbles out, because if you fill this 100% with fluid, it'll hydrolock and then it won't move again because there's no reservoir. All right. I always keep a shelf of little bins or jars or stuff that we're gonna throw away from the kitchen. I bring them into the garage. They're always useful for catching power steering fluid or brake fluid or bleeding a ram like this. Always handy to keep around. And like I said, you can use any sort of hydraulic fluid, so power steering fluid, this is jack oil, probably brake fluid, I don't know.
Power steering fluid and steering fluid are not the same as hydraulic oil. Hydraulic oil is
Alexa, off. That was creepy. I like to use, whatever you do use, I like to use a clear container so that you can see the bubbles come out and see when they stop and know when you're done. Submerge that in there. And get comfortable. It's going to take a minute.
Two hours later.
All right. Bleeding that absolutely sucked, as I'm sure you can tell by the mess that I've created. Every time I do it, I forget the tip. So let me tell you so that I can watch this video in the future and remember. Bleeding with one hose is not ideal, right? So I set the valve so that it was just barely open, which the resistance when you're pulling out creates enough suction in the one hose that if you stand it up in the vertical position with your cup here, you pull until it like squeezes a bunch of air out, and then you hold until the bubbles disperse, and then it's gonna have a bunch of suction on it that wants to pull that rod back in. If you slowly let it back in, you can watch the suction that you've created sucking the fluid back into this top reservoir. And I just did that like 3 times. Squeeze all the air out, suck the fluid in, squeeze all the air out, suck the fluid in. And then that's actually the perfect amount of bleeding. If you recall earlier, I told you that we don't want this completely perfectly bled because it'll hydrolock. So you'll see it opens up on its own, and then right when it gets past the horizontal plane, it'll hold itself. And then my speed control all works perfectly. So that's great. These Dash 3 fittings should not leak like the other ones did. And now I don't have to worry about any of the hoses rubbing or anything breaking. Hopefully this will be just how it is for a long, long time. So with the hydraulic downward assist done, that took way longer than I wanted. The next thing I want to do is, I have this magnetic light on here. You can get these on Amazon. They're real cheap. It's called a sewing light. It is got its own power switch on it. So what I want to do is wire this under the table to the power switch for the machine, so that whenever the power comes on, this will turn on, or I'll also have my own on-off switch over here. Having 2 plugs behind this machine, and this plug being significantly shorter than the like 10-foot plug that came on the saw, I think it'd be a lot cleaner. So let's do that. so what I'm seeing is these two screws hold a little electrical box on the back side of this switch. So I'm going to take those off and see if I can get the cover off without taking the switch off. All right, let's see what that did. All right, so I got the switch out in the little electrical box. And what I found is perfect. So you got the power coming in, power going to the motor, one side going to the switch, the other side wire wire nutted. So what I'm gonna do is cut the plug off of this side, run it into the box, take the black and crimp it to the black on the plug side, and then put a new connector on this. Heat shrink both of these because this is creepy. These are raw and this is just bare metal. And then I'll just add a third wire to this wire nut. And then whenever the saw is plugged in, the light will have power and I can use the light to set my cuts up. And then I don't have to plug a second item in. So let's go. So this clip's going to be sped up with no sound because I decided to listen to music in the garage while I was working, and I'm pretty sure I'm not allowed to play Katy Perry on YouTube, so here you go. All you're seeing is me cutting the end off of the power cable for the light, crimping some new connectors onto the ends of the two wires going to the switch, and then adding that neutral wire to the wire nutted combination of wires already under the saw. I basically wrap everything up just to realize that the wire going to the light, I never routed it through the frame the way that I need to be able to put the chip tray back on. The clip where I was showing you the wiring, I neglected to route the new wire in a way that would work. You only got to see it once. So I ended up cutting the end off. Make sure you pay attention to how you're routing your wire before you terminate your connections. And up the side, so it won't interfere with the chip tray. That keeps it clear of the motor and any spinny bits in the up or horizontal position. And then, let's go to the other side. All right, up there is your little electrical box. So the white cord is the light we just added. I used a step bit and drilled a new grommet into the box. So that's protected. Captured it with that little wire clip as well and routed it back with everything else. So now that is on the plug side of the wiring. So plugging one item in, bam. I'll have a light for the bandsaw. Count that as a win. All right, and that about wraps things up. For anyone who stuck around, thank you guys for watching. This is Garrett Garage. Please like and subscribe if you like this type of stuff. And if you're the type of person who wants to try this yourself or you've modified your own tools, then find me on Instagram, Garrett_garage, and send me a picture of what you're working on. Every little bit helps, so thank you guys.